Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Tisha here, back for another 50 years in polygamy read. Go ahead and do me a favor and like the video. We are on chapter 27, Infidelity in Polygamy. This is year 1981. Our girls camping planning. It says camp planning. I'm starting off wrong already. Okay, from the top. Our girls' camp planning, though long and tedious, turned out to be another validation of my abilities. I was grateful to God I had so much to offer. Ellen and Myrna had a remarkable spiritual connection with God, which I envied. With all my might, heart, and strength, I had fasted and prayed so I too would know what they claimed to know. I wanted to have the Spirit of God and His direction in everything, large and small. Every now and then, I thought I had it. A few months before that planning meeting, Mark, Diane, and I decided it would be nice to have dinner together on Sundays as one big family. I would prepare the meal on my Sundays with Mark, and Diane would fix the meals on her Sundays with Mark. We also agreed Mark's time with each of us would begin and end at certain times of the day. He said he would not be with either one of us if it wasn't our allocated time. And as sister wives, we agreed to honor each other by not stealing his time when it wasn't ours. During the drawn-out camp meetings, I excused myself from the table to check the pot roast I've been cooking for my family. I'd already cut up a pot full of potatoes and set out the ingredients to make a cake. I look forward to our family dinner together. It was my day with Mark, and I hoped when the ladies left, he'd come in from his shop to help me with the rest of the meal and hang out for a while. When the ladies left around 4:30, I sent 5-year-old Skylar out to the shop to invite his dad inside, and then downstairs to ask Diane if we could borrow a couple eggs so I could get the cake made. Sky returned with tears rolling down his cheeks. Dad yelled at me and told me to go back upstairs. I held Sky in my arms for a few minutes and made up some excuse for Mark's anger. I'm so sorry, honey. Maybe your dad is trying to sleep. No, Dad isn't asleep. He said I should get my ass back upstairs right now. Why is he so mad at me, Mom? Mark might as well have shoved his large arm and fist down my throat and pulled my stomach back up the same way. His frustrations, I knew well, brought another gut ache. He had used that tone of voice with our children when he wanted some privacy, some uninterrupted time in the bedroom. I gave Sky some crayons and a paper and asked him to draw me a picture, then went downstairs. There wasn't one sound in the dark basement. I wonder where Diane's kids were. I knew what I was in for, but I was fuming. I tapped on Diane's bedroom door and waited. Even though I knew no one would answer, at least for the first few times, while the two of them pretended no one was home, my heart was pounding. I knocked a little bit harder. Still, there was no answer. Then I banged on the door. Damn it, Sky, I told you to get your ass back upstairs. Mark yelled. I heard Diane whisper something. There was no going back now. I pounded on the door, knowing there was a possibility I might get pounded on when I opened it. The door squeaked open about 5 or 6 inches. Mark's shocked face and naked shoulder were in my face. What do you need, Sophia? He asked, unable to disguise his frustration and guilt. Even the anger in my voice couldn't conceal my horrific heartache. Just came down to verify what I already knew. That's what I needed. It was a struggle to climb up the stairs. Every muscle and organ in my body hurt. I turned off the oven and the heat under the potatoes. Jack woke up when I changed his diapers and dressed him. After I splashed cold water on my swollen eyes, I marched across our back filled with Sky, the baby in one arm and the diaper bag across my shoulder. I knocked on the door and waited to hear Swade's deep, warm voice, come on in. The delicious smell of his corned beef hash and gravy permeated the air. When I walked in, there was Diane and Mark sitting at the table set for 3. Miraculously, I composed myself long enough to ask Sway to loan me 2 eggs. In front of my cheating partners, it was difficult not to ask him right out loud if I could borrow 2 bloody, stinking, fat-ass cheating eggs. The 2 large suitcases on my bed were nearly full when Mark came in. Adrenaline surge, anger, and pain had propelled me so rapidly, I was still flying around the house gathering clothes. "Where are you going, Sophia?" Mark finally asked. I had no energy to speak, even if I wanted to. "I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "It's just that I became faint from hyperventilating." I turned to go in the boys' room when Mark grabbed my shoulders. "Stop and talk to me, Sophia," he demanded. I pulled myself away to grab a few more diapers from the hamper. They unfolded all over the floor. Before Mark could bend down to pick them up, I grabbed them up in one heap and shoved them into the diaper bag. Mark followed me into the kitchen. "Stop running around and listen to me." I snatched a few baby bottles, some baby food, and Jack's formula from the cupboard, stormed back in my room, and bustled around, looking for my old comfortable shoes. When I turned towards the bed, Mark forced me to sit down and demanded I listen to him, but I couldn't listen. I sprang up again. "I don't want to listen or talk about anything anymore. I am done," I blurted. "I've had it. I am sick to death of Diane's shit and your shit. You can stink and have each other. I'm out of here," I yelled. Mark pulled me back on the bed next to him and held me there. "Don't leave, Sophia. We can work things out." So you basically were supposed to be with her because it was her day, but rather than being with her, you went downstairs and you were intimate with Diane while she's sitting up there cooking a meal for the both of you on her day. And you can't understand why she's frustrated or why she's mad at you. I don't blame Sophia for getting upset and wanting to leave, but Sophia's probably going to come back, y'all, because we know she had a lot more kids with him, so she's coming back. Whew. Mark pulled me back on the bed next to him and held me there. "Don't leave, Sophia. We can work things out." Again, I fought with him to get back up, and I had no more energy or strength left. I elbowed his arms off of me. "Just leave me alone, Mark. I have to go. I won't deal with this shit anymore. I'm leaving with the boys before we die." Mark repeated ever sincere and reasonable excuse he could possibly come up with to console and cheer me up and get me to stay. "Diane is really insecure. She doesn't feel like I love her as much as I love you. I made a big mistake by being with her today, and I'm so sorry. She's always jealous because she sees what you and I have together, and she wants to have the same relationship with me. You have his place to escape to, and she just wants to be a part of his life as well." So she goes to the neighbor's house to get away from the crap and the mess, and because there she feels appreciated and loved, and she has a comfort. Diane has a whole family that bought Christmas gifts for all of her kids in the previous chapter, and Mark when she didn't get that. Then Mark went and bought all that extra stuff for Diane, a TV and a VCR, and she didn't get that. But she, once again, is supposed to give of the one little thing that she has for herself and her kids, because Diane has to have that too. I told you all I do not like Diane. She has her family and friends to escape to, Mark. I'm sick of her trying to take, copy, borrow, do, and have everything I have and do. I know and I agree with you, but when I was at Swede's place this morning, she walked over. He felt obligated to ask her to have dinner like he does with you and me. I don't give a crap, Mark. We had an agreement. You two screwing around on my time was the most disrespectful thing you could do. And what were you two going to do? Wait until I fix all of us an elaborate meal and then tell me you were not hungry? Or were you two going to fake it and pig out anyway? You're right. I was very disrespectful, and I'm wrong in the way I was trying to console her insecurities. You have lots of friends, activities, things to do. You're talented and beautiful. You see, Sophia, Diane sees and knows how much I love you, and it's killing her. Please forgive me and her. I can't do this. I can't live this way without you. I caved into the sound of goodness coming from Mark. That's all it took. That's all it took, girl. I knew he loved me, at least most of the time. For the sake of survival and righteousness, I had to believe everything he said. I was sure he was trying to do the best he knew how to do, considering he had 2 insecure women to please. Besides, I had to be there for the long haul anyway. What could I do differently? Where would I go? Who would ever treat my 4 boys like their own? Who could have ever loved me as much as Mark did? He'd tell me all the time, no one will ever love you as much as I do, Sophia. No one will desire or touch you the way I do. I love you more than anything or anyone on earth. I am nothing without you and my kids, nothing. He's a liar, and he's going to do whatever he can do to keep you, because that's what they do. It took me a while to forgive Diane and Mark again, in spite of all the hardships in our family and in those plural families all around us. Diane and I were still making strides. I knew we were feeling a deeper bond of sisterhood and camaraderie. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be camaraderie. I'm not going to be lovey-dovey. Oh, yes, we're in this together, when you blatantly do things to hurt me, because that's what that was. But that's why I'm not a polygamist. In fact, I mean, there's many other reasons, but I'm just saying. In fact, it meant the world to me when she apologized for the hurtful things she did and said before she married Mark. In retrospect, she realized how mean she had been by showing me her honeymoon lingerie and for sprawling herself all over Mark in front of me. She told me even the idea of Mark ever taking another wife was hard for her, let alone the reality of it. When she asked me to forgive her, I could honestly tell her I already had a long time before, but her awareness and caring meant a lot to me. It was a terrible sin to talk negatively about your husband. I knew better, yet I didn't stop. If husbands weren't doing what they should, wives were to pray for them until they did. Behind every successful man is a good woman, or 2 or 3. The male God I grew up with had everything figured out. If Mark wasn't fulfilling his priesthood calling, it meant Diane and I were not faithful and qualified enough to change him. Yet another way women are at fault. Yeah, why is she at fault for what he's not doing? He is a grown man that's supposed to be the head of the house. Why is the women expected to make sure that he's in line? And if he's not, it's on them. Ugh. In one of my particularly frustrated moods, I jumped down the stairs to complain to Diane about our husband and to get some support from her. I had several things to say, but I began with the worst of my grievances. I shouldn't have to be cleaning other people's houses all day and then come home to my filthy, dirty house and do everything else around here. I hate using food stamps while Mark sleeps or reads all day long and does very little to help support us. Diane threw in her 2 cents worth. She too said she hated the distance he kept between him and our children when he was home. He should take our kids places and go do fun things with them. He should be our spiritual leader, Diane. How is he going to get us to the celestial kingdom if he won't even be the patriarch of our household? Suddenly, I sensed Mark's presence and his hurt. Quit now, Sophia. I heard my soul warn, but I didn't listen or stop. I looked around the room and continued to run amok. Mark could do anything, something to make some money. I've given him 100 suggestions. He could go to work at night, so if he got masonry job during the day, he'd be available. With his talents, he could make things at home and sell them. Even a part-time job would be better than nothing. Stop it now, Sophia, my soul prompted me again. If you don't, you will be sorry. And again, as I often do, I ignored my soul and went on. He should love us and care for us enough to, in an instant. Mark was at the bottom of the landing. To what, Sophia? Care enough to what? I'll tell you what I care about. I care enough to get the hell out of here. I care enough to know when and where I'm not wanted. I felt as though my body had been slammed against the wall. I was sure I deserved every bit of it. No, you didn't, because your husband won't do what he was supposed to do, which is take care of the household. You out there 7 months pregnant, going and walking up the hill with your crying child, having to work all day, then standing on a bus for hours, then waiting outside in the rain for his other wife who seems to not be working to come and get you. And you over here talking about what you shouldn't do, and he's talking about he doesn't want to get another job because if a masonry job comes up, he wants to make sure he can go. Everything she said was right. Mark hurled back up the stairs. I chased after him. In our room, he dumped 3 drawers of clothing onto the bed. His whole body shook from heartache and anger. Good, let him feel it. While he urgently separated the socks, shirts, and underwear he wanted into piles, I begged him to forgive me and to please stay. Please don't leave us, Mark, I wailed. I am so sorry. I knew better than to complain and didn't stop. I'm so sorry. He didn't say one word to me. I sat on the edge of our bed sobbing. I muttered some more nonsense until he stormed out of our room and back down the stairs. 10 minutes later, he reappeared with more clothing and an old metal suitcase. As quickly and tightly as he could, he crammed every inch of it with his things before he smashed it shut and snapped the metal bars over the latches. The fire in his eyes scorched my soul. "I'm leaving, Sophia," he said somewhere between a growl and a whimper. "Maybe you'll hear from me in a few days, maybe not." Mark slammed the front door with such terrific force it sounded like a bomb exploded. From my glazed-over eyes, I watched the tires of his old white Chevy pickup fling mud and gravel against the garage door as he spun out of our driveway. I could hardly function. Our kids were scared and wondering what happened to their dad. Neither Diane nor I heard from Mark for nearly 5 days. When he finally talked to me, his voice was cold and short and snappy. "I'm in California working for my brother." So you just up and just dipped off and went all the way to California when you got mad at her, yet she caught y'all in the act of having sex and doing it on her night, and she forgave you, but you get to go away for 5 days. Okay, yeah. There's a lot of work here, so I'll send you as much money as I can, as often as I can. I'll keep only what I need to get by. Okay, I said, not knowing what else to say. All right, goodbye then, he said quickly. Wait, Mark, I really am sorry I hurt you so much. I was clearly out of line and I knew better than that. He interrupted. It's okay, Sophia. I deserved every bit of it. I am all those terrible things you said. I've been a real asshole. Now that I'm way out here, you and the kids won't have to put up with me anymore. She has some pictures of, okay, I'm going to read them from left to right, show y'all the pictures. Grandpa Byron and his second wife. Her parents, Owen. Ooh, her father was handsome. Owen and Vera when they became engaged. Okay, let me do it like this. That's the grandpa there. See her daddy? Her daddy was cute. Oh, this thing ain't focusing. Anyways, her and her cousins. Y'all can't really see them. I normally show pictures when I have them, but I'm 2.5 and standing on my mom's couch in the unfurnished basement, in that bottom one right there. And then that's her and her brother in that one. I hope y'all can see it. I can't see it. Oh, it's a bunch of pictures. Okay, these are, this is the picture, you guys. Remember when she talked about her mom cutting off her long hair? So first is her mom cutting off her long hair. Then we'll see her at 9, which is the first birthday celebration that she remembers. Then at 13, when she met both Royce and Mark, she was pretty. And her at her sweet 16. Pretty girl. Oh, yeah, you can see these way better. See, she was a pretty girl. Beautiful. I mean, she's still pretty on the cover. Then she has her sisters, her mother with 3 of the daughters, her wedding day. Oh, wait. Oh, I guess that was her father. He don't look as cute right there. I thought it was her husband. I was about to say, woo. And her mother holding her first baby. So that's her and some of her sisters. Her mom and some of her sisters. Her and her dad. And then her mom holding her baby. Oh, she got a lot of pictures. Trying to see if any of these are worth showing. I had a tough time getting ready for this family picture where I weighed so much and felt so inadequate. She has herself and some of her kids, and it looks like she blurred out, I'm guessing, her husband. Interesting. All blondes. Look at that. This is a picture of the AUB church when it was first built. And when she attended there, it looked like a warehouse. And then she has a picture of seven of my father's 13 wives. Wow. Wow. So there's the church. Father and the wives. 13? That's just too much. Okay, it's a bunch of pictures in here, y'all. More pictures. I don't really think y'all care about the pictures. Do y'all? If you do, I'll go back and show them at another time. But, all right. Let me get back to this. Oh, no, let me show this one. 6 of my 7 adult kids with Leroy and I. 10 of my 23 grandchildren were there. So far, we have 6 great. Okay, never mind. That's something different. Because that's not the husband. I think this is her current man. Y'all see? Okay. Back to reading. I guess you're right, I replied. Now you won't have to put up with us either. If I were a better wife and more grateful for all of the things you have done and tried to do for us, this would have happened. You're not as awful as I made you out to be, Mark. I know, he said somberly. I know exactly how you felt for a long time. That's why I had to get out of there and come here to work. You need me away from you so you can heal and have your spiritual needs met without me holding you back. Will you be okay? I asked. How long will you be gone? What else can I say to let you know how sorry I am? I'll be fine. I don't have any idea when I'll get back. We'll see how things go and take it from there. Gotta go now. Mark, are you there? I asked into a dead airspace somewhere between his hell and mine. On August 16th, everyone in the All Red group received the message. Ervil LeBaron had died in his cell at the Utah State Prison. While it was reported his death was from natural causes, many of us wanted to believe it was God's retribution for his evil deeds. Still, some of us felt he got off much too easy and should have suffered. Either way, we were jubilant. Evil Ervil was in hell where he surely belonged. We've been living together in our new home for 6.5 years, but our whole yard was still a disaster. Over the years, most of the topsoil and fill dirt that used to be in 3 or 4 piles had been mixed up and spread across the front yard. It was scattered with Tonka trucks, Hot Wheels, and holes full of muddy water. The boys' bike trails and jumps also ran up, down, and over in between. What was left of the dirt piles was packed down as hard as a rock. The only cheery thing about the yard was the bouquets of dandelions the boys proudly picked from weeds that blanketed the few spots of fertile earth around the perimeter. At least 100 times, Mark had described his big dreams for the front yard. Because of his plans, he didn't want me to do anything until we had time and money to build a retaining wall. He wanted 2 layers of lawn, a sidewalk, a driveway, a flower garden, and more. But none of those dreams had come to fruition. As our lives have proved thus far, we would never have money to finish the yard. It was more important to put food on the table and clothes on our backs. The years were way too long and one day too many. I was so embarrassed about our yard disasters. I never wanted our neighbors to see me. I knew any more humiliation would surely turn me inside out. So they never were able to fix the yard, but that other guy that had lived with them for that time and didn't pay rent but was doing stuff was able to do things around the house and outside the house. I don't understand what Mark was doing, why he didn't work on this stuff while he wasn't working prior to this. Mark was gone and couldn't do anything to help, nor could he talk me into waiting for the someday that never would come. With Ellen's encouragement and prodding me forward, I decided to make things happen, one baby step, one shovel, and one day at a time. With Mark's old work gloves on both hands, I hauled a bunch of old cinder block from our junkyard in the backfield to the front, about 5 feet out from the front brick wall in our house. I dug a ditch 8 inches wide and 2 inches deep. It ran the full length of the house. From the outside edge of our 5 by 5 foot porch going in both directions, I placed blocks to the end of the trench. Then I lugged at least 100, it seemed, wheelbarrows full of rich dark soil from the old pigeon and our chicken yard to fill the 300 square foot span. A few weeks later, when the space was full and level, I purchased discounted, nearly dead plants from the garden shops and solicited many flower starts as I could find from friends and family members. With tender, loving care, I planted each contribution in my first large flower garden. By the middle of September, I had picked, shoveled, and spread only a tiny slice of remaining topsoil. I still had at least 9/10 yet to level. One day, I rested on the porch to catch my breath. As I pressed my hand on my abdomen, I was overjoyed to feel my 20-week-old baby squirming inside. So she's doing all this and she's pregnant. Once again, she's just doing it. On both sides of me were bundles of tiny sweet williams ready to bloom. I sipped from a tall glass of ice water, let it drizzle down my chin onto my chest. My whole being felt soothed. I recall the first time I held Jake, my firstborn son, in my arms. I had stared in awe of the tiny little human who had grown in my womb. That was absolutely the most exhilarating day of my life. Up to that point, other than a few seconds now and then, when people nagged me into mistrusting myself, I had no doubt my first baby was in fact a male. With the exception of taking my baby daughter out of my womb and holding her like I did in my dreams with Jake, I was sure I was carrying our first daughter. While Carrie, Sky, Jake, and Diane's toddler played in the dirt a few feet away, I thank God for my tears of joy and for the health and strength to be able to make a little progress in our front yard. I thank God for the flowers that would soon be in full bloom, smiling at us. I also thank God for our old dog, Brandy, and our 6 new ducks eating and pooping all the earwigs around our backyard. We would sell Brandy's litter of purebred pups to help us purchase school clothes. Wow. Our 6 or 8 chickens gave us eggs each day, and we had a passel of adorable chicks. For that, I was good. I thank God. At last, I asked him for the strength and the money to get the rest of our front yard leveled and planted with grass seed before it got too cold to germinate. Come on, kids, let's get out those rakes and shovels and dig it again, I shouted, but the kids couldn't hear one single word over the sound of our neighbor's bobcat. They ran up to the porch for fear Gary might run over them. He drove his bobcat right up next to me and turned off the engine. Gary had probably spoken a few words to me in the 3 or 4 years he lived next door. I was shocked when he asked, "So, what is it you want done out here, Sophia?" I wondered if this was some kind of joke. I felt sure his wife would rather we didn't live here at all. She often complained my children had or hadn't done this or that. Once she called the Division of Family Services on us, PLIGS. She told them we were giving our food stamps away and starving the children. The service worker just laughed after he saw our plump, tall, healthy children. He said our neighbors, a simple-minded complaint, came when she saw my older boys fighting over a piece of candy. From our front porch, the kids and I were encircled in clouds of dust for nearly an hour. All of us eagerly watched Gary level and grade the earth from my flower garden down to the road. When our live motion picture had come to an end, we ran inside to clean up. I looked in the hallway mirror just inside our door and laughed out loud. The dust powder had entered my smile lines and covered my teeth with grit. Ooh. The next day, when Swade and I were on our way to purchase lawn seed from our neighborhood farmers, I told him about Gary's good deed. "Yeah, I know," he said. I gave him a piece of my mind. I told him, "You damned well ought to be ashamed of yourself, sitting on your ass right next door to Sophia, watching her try to level the whole damn yard with a rake and a shovel. Damn it, Gary, if you're any kind of man, you'll get your ass over there and get it done for her. If it's money for gas you're worried about, I'll give it to you." I was still so elated over the help, even if it was coerced. I fluttered around the store full of appreciation for Swade, for Gary, for the whole wide world. I splurged on a thin 5-foot maple tree and some quality lawn seed. About 5 feet from the road and our bumpy dirt driveway, I planted my tree and nicknamed it my Carolyn tree, after our forthcoming baby girl. I watered the grass seeds 3 times a day. I guarded our freshly planted area as if it were gold and watched intently for our first pristine blades of grass to pop through the earth. As days passed, the mailman and most passerbys commented on how nice the yard was looking. After 7 years of weed patch pile of rubble eyesore they've been looking at, I can only imagine what they really wanted to say. Mark started calling more often. We would have some great phone conversations, and the family sent letters back and forth quite often. We missed him, but things were looking up. We didn't have a dad or a husband around, but we were able to get off food stamps and not go back to dumpster diving. What a great source of pride for us. And you know what? That's what food stamps are for. I feel like they've been abused over the years by people, but food stamps are meant to get you back on your feet and then for you to get off so that the next person can use them. But unfortunately, that isn't what happens a lot of times. Mark told me Diane was always anxious to get the mail so she could make sure each of our letters from him weighed the same and were the same thickness. Every time we received a check from Mark, Diane and I would go through our long list of expenses and try to budget the money. There was still not enough. Often our conversations would get heated as we disagree on which bills must be paid, which ones would have to wait, and how we should divide a few personal dollars for our sanity. Diane felt any extra money should be divided 50-50. Of course, I couldn't see that as fair at all. She had 3 young children, and I had 4 older kids and another baby on the way. I agree. I don't know why they do the 50-50 thing, because isn't that what the Browns did? I don't think it's right. Damn it, Mark said. When I told him about the disagreement, I don't know what in the hell either of you are thinking, but I've decided the way it will be. You two should pay all the bills first. If you can squeeze any money out for anything else, split it into tenths. You take 6 tenths and she can take 4. Okay, sounds good. I can deal with that. And I think it will be all right with her as well, I told him. Well, it damn well better be, Mark shouted. If not, that's just tough. I'm sick of hearing you two gripe and whine about everything. I can't ever do anything for you without feeling obligated to do the same for her. If I want to buy you something, I have to get Diane something. If I write a 10-page letter to you, I got to write her a 10-page letter. But that's how Diane understands fairness and equality, I said. Still, her perception of fair never worked for me. When Mark bought Diane her rings that looked too much like mine, it wasn't fair to me. Just 1 year after they were married, Mark, in trying to be fair, bought us identical heart lockets for Valentine's Day, their engagement anniversary. I didn't see this as fair, but Mark had done his best. He got gifts he liked and wanted to give to each of us. If they had been different, he worried one of us would feel the other piece of jewelry was more elegant or expensive. So he was sure if he got us the same or nearly the same things, he couldn't be faulted. A year later, I had to tell Mark the truth when he asked, "Why don't you wear the heart pendant I bought you?" I tried to explain it. Apparently, Diane likes to have and do the same things you do with or for me. When I got contact lenses, she wanted some. When I started fixing up my kitchen, she needed to fix hers. If you take me to see a show, she wants to see the same show. If we go to Lava Hot Springs, you have to take Diane to Lava Hot Springs. You just watch. When I buy a personalized license plate, she will have one too. On the contrary, Mark, if you take Diane to a jazz game, I don't want you to take me to one. If you take her to the zoo, I don't want you to take me to the zoo. If she deep cleans her house on Monday, I have to do mine on another day. I am me. I need and want my autonomy. I don't want to be like anyone else. I don't want you to buy me the same things you buy her. I don't want you to take me to the same movies, restaurants, or hotels either. The Oak Ridge Boys lyrics, "Trying to love 2 women is like a ball and chain," seemed fitting for Mark. I felt so sorry for him and for any polygamous men who really tried to be fair. It seemed they could not win no matter what they did or didn't do. Let me see if I have time to read another chapter. I know y'all like the longer reads. Let me see. This is chapter 28 if I do read it. How many pages is 28? All right, I think I'm going to be pushing it a little bit, but chapter 28, Guilt and Punishment, 1982. My mother finally got to retire from nursing in 1981. She was 66 years old and had more time to spend with her family and grandchildren. Dad and his sons finished another huge fourplex on his property in Bluffdale, Utah. Mom got to move from her tiny home in Murray that she'd been sharing with a sister wife. What a treat it was to watch her choose all of the colors she wanted for her upstairs apartment. She was feeling like the Queen of Sheba in her new house. Not long after she moved in, she told me she was going to move downstairs because one of her new sister wives wanted to live upstairs instead of in the basement. Oh, God, here her mom goes again. Why? I snapped at Mom. You love this house. It's yours. You chose all the colors and the carpet and the paint you like. You're settling and you deserve this beautiful home, Mom. Don't allow them to do this to you. Aura can move downstairs. Her eyes were wet with tears, and she said sorrowfully, it doesn't really matter much to me, Sophia. I need to do whatever your father wants me to do. I knew it didn't matter to her. She'd only been in her home for 6 months, and she was already being asked to move, booted out. It's always what Owen wants, what Owen needs, which really means what Aunt Eleanor has otherwise want or need, I explained. What about what you want for once in your life? I desperately wanted to sink some sense into my mother. I wanted to scream to Dad for his lack of sensitivity towards her dreams, her needs, and wishes. Anyone could take advantage of Mom's goodness since they knew she would give in to anyone at any time. I wanted to smack Dad and his new wife clear to the moon for their injustice. I think the fact that he has 13 wives is ridiculous. Ridiculous. That means he goes sometimes 2 weeks without seeing a wife. That's not healthy. But nothing I did or said would matter, not one iota. She moved out of her lovely home, the one she finally didn't have to share after all these years, into a basement. My sister Francine had become a certified midwife, and I was seeing her for my regular checkups. She assured me everything was going as well as it could be expected, other than the constant discomfort and pain in my lower abdomen. By the end of January, I'd already gone into labor several times, just as I'd done with Skylar, but this time my contractions were stronger and harder. So I called Mark and begged him to fly home. He dropped everything and got home in plenty of time. In fact, he had more than 2 weeks to spare. One day I went through 6 or 7 hours of hard labor before it completely quit again. I was ready and willing to have this baby by C-section if we could have afforded it. I'd have pled with a doctor or just cut her out of my miserable, huge body. My emotions were raw in every sense of the word. Mark waited during the whole 14 days. His boss had given him off before he had to leave again. During the nights he slept with Diane, my heart ached with jealousy. What would life be like if I could have a husband of my own and not have to feel this kind of abandonment? Feeling ripped into pieces was by far more unbearable than my pregnancy. The night before he went back to California, we held each other, cried, talked, and laughed for hours. I tried to explain how difficult it was to have to share the 2 or 3 days he is home after he'd been gone for a week on end. I was certain Diane felt the same way, but for this time being so pregnant and feeling so vulnerable, this sharing was unbearable. Mark assured me it was hard for him to be home for only a few days and have to leave again too. We reminisced like we'd never done before. We laughed about the good, wild, crazy, happy times and lamented over the many things that had not gone as we had planned it or dreamed. Neither of us mentioned the innumerable fights and disagreements in the years gone by. Right then we wanted each other and knew we'd do our best to make a go of things. By the time we got to the airport, I wanted to lock the car doors and make Diane stay there and wait while I told my husband goodbye alone in privacy. That's the way it should be. I wished with all my heart I'd never encouraged Mark to marry her. What in God's name was I thinking? You were thinking that in your polygamous faith, that's what you were supposed to do. My huge pregnant belly felt so tight. I feared my horrendous grief would start me into labor. But there was nothing I could do, not one thing, except try to hide my agony and behave myself like a good, sweet, honorable sister wife should do. Diane, her kids, and my kids all stared at Mark's plane until it flew out of sight. I knew he wouldn't be able to come back for our daughter's birth. I knew he wasn't abandoning me. It just felt like he was. The throbbing pain pierced through my whole body. I was weak and sick all over. Even in my embarrassment, I couldn't hide my anguish this time around. I couldn't move. From a bench next to the huge window, I watched Diane and our kids walk away. In a few minutes, Alan returned to see what was going on. He looked so sad when he saw me. Go ahead and walk with Aunt Diane, I told him. I need to be alone. I'll follow you to the car. I'll get there as soon as I can. Early one morning during the second week of February, I woke up to a gush of warm, thick liquid pouring onto the bed between my legs. I'd never felt this sensation before, but I remembered other women talking about the amniotic sac breaking and spilling the fluid even before labor began, so I stayed calm. Oh, she never had her water break. I wanted to call Mark, yet I didn't want to. No matter, he had already told me he couldn't come back so soon after his last long visit. I was angry, but not because I felt it was his fault. I was annoyed over the whole situation, especially as the labor began and progressed. I wanted him to know I was in labor so he could be a part of it, at least in his heart. No, he should know so he could worry about me. No, he should. Oh, it does say that. It's the least the father of my baby can do. Then again, maybe he shouldn't even have the privilege of knowing his daughter would be born. After my emotional battle, I decided not to ruin his day by telling him about a situation he had no control over. I wait and call him after the baby was born. I finally got Jake up and had him go downstairs to tell Diane I'd soon be leaving to go to Aunt Amelia's and would she please look after my boys as we had arranged. When she came up to see what was going on, I told her not to tell Mark anything, one way or the other. It was my right to keep him posted or not. Aunt Amelia and Dad came to get me. All the way to her house, I still felt angry and abandoned. I couldn't quit sobbing. Francine and Aunt Amelia made up a bed with sterile sheets and pads and then put blankets back on. As quickly as possible, I climbed under the blankets, laid in fetal position, and cried some more. Francine and Aunt Amelia rubbed my back and talked me through each pain as well as they could. They tried to soothe my fears and my anxieties by reassuring me everything would go well, even without Mark there. My labor progressed rapidly. The contractions were excruciatingly brutal when compared to my previous deliveries. With every intensifying pain, I wondered if we'd make it this time around. At the transitional stage, I became so emotional I could hardly hold myself together. I heard Mom and Auntie whispering, and then I saw their worried faces. Francine told them, "Go get Dad now." In a short time, a brother-in-law and Dad came in and administered to me. Dad put a drop of consecrated olive oil on the crown of my head with their hands placed on top of my head. Dad pronounced a blessing for my unborn infant and me, saying we can make it through this ordeal perfectly whole and healthy. For hours, the labor pains continued without any progress. I never screamed during childbirth before, but I couldn't help but shriek with this whole intolerable suffering. I was scared. Finally, Francine told me my baby was presenting face first. Her cranial bones weren't able to compress as would normally have happened. She was caught between my pelvic bone and my tailbone. Oh, Lord. I had two choices. They could call an ambulance, admit me to the hospital for an emergency C-section, or we could continue to try at home, but risk one or both of us dying. I can't go to the hospital. We don't have time, I told her. We got to get her out now before we both die. Francine's hands, like forceps, gently tugged the baby's chin with each contraction to still no avail. I've got to push her out soon or we won't make it, I screamed. For some reason, in nature's amazing and divine order, I knew what to do. Help me get up. I've got to get up on my knees, I told them. With Auntie on one side and my mother on the other, I grasped their arms tightly and bore down long, hard, steady pushes, one after another. Push, keep pushing, Francine and Mom said. It's working, Francine shouted. Keep going, Sophia. You can do it. You can do it. Keep pushing. I can feel her forehead now. I just about have her chin out from under your pelvic bone. Come on, honey. You can do it. Don't give up. I screamed and cursed some more. I pushed until I thought my whole insides would come out with my baby. I knew it was a matter of life or death. Now, gentle, steady pushes, Francine coached me. It won't be long and you'll have your baby in your arms. When Carolyn was finally born, I fell backwards like a rag doll and sobbed. Francine got Carolyn breathing and handed her to me, but my muscles wouldn't work enough to reach for her. I didn't have the strength to hold her 8-pound, 4-ounce body in my arms. She always has larger babies. even to lift up my own head. My mother positioned Carolyn on her side right next to me so I could stare at her. I couldn't contain my gratitude for our lives, yet I couldn't let go of my guilt. In our religion, there was always something more to feel ashamed and guilty about. Again, I felt responsible for everything that had gone wrong during my delivery. Girl, you were smart enough, or God gave you the inspiration, or whatever you want to call it, to get yourself in a position where you were able to get that baby out despite your sister, who was a midwife at that time, struggling. Don't do that to yourself. Don't blame yourself. God, I was sure, not only punished me, but my infant for my sins. Exodus 25 says, for the sins of the parents are visited on the third and fourth generation. Okay, I get all of that, but this isn't the case for this. We're talking about generational things. Example, drug addiction would be something that happens because genetically it's just something. I can't explain science. Anyways, the point is that's not what's being talked about. You could kind of say that verse is kind of like what goes around comes around type of situation. But anyways, if only I were a better person. If I hadn't encouraged Chad's flirting and attention a couple of years ago, God wouldn't have punished my infant. There wouldn't be bruises on her face and body. Her eyes wouldn't be so swollen she couldn't open them. She'd have a strong, healthy cry instead of her lethargic, barely audible whimper. I could hardly hear or see her breathing. When she was at least able to open up one eye a tiny bit and look at me, I was sure she knew her suffering was my fault. Carolyn should have been thriving and rooting about for my breast as any strong, healthy baby would have been by then. Tears rolled down my cheeks onto the sheets. I asked God to forgive me for hurting an innocent child. In an instant, I was full of resentment towards God. It's not her fault, I said under my breath. It's mine, not hers. How could you do this to my innocent baby girl? I slept for a few hours and then called Mark to tell him about his amazing daughter. He said he already heard about her and was grateful we were both doing okay now. So how did he hear about her? Who told him? Because didn't Diane say don't say anything? I pushed my anger towards Diane deeper inside. She should have let me tell Carolyn's dad about her first. She should have. I also knew it wasn't Mark's fault he couldn't be there, but in spite of everything, I was resentful and knew it would take me a long time to feel settled. Not long after Carolyn was born, Diane and I agreed I should watch her 3 children while she worked as a secretary. We needed and wanted the extra income. Since she had typing and shorthand skills, she could earn more income than I could, and I was happy and I didn't have to leave my young child with the babysitter. Things were going pretty well for a while. Diane and I were becoming as thick as thieves, as the saying goes. We wanted to, and we had. Since we were now sharing the same broken down car and making all of the household decisions with no husband at home to be concerned about or to share in the family evenings, we spent more time visiting with each other and our children. As canning season approached, Jake and Alan helped me with 7-month-old Carolyn, the usual household jobs, and the care of the other kids. During this time, we put 25 bushels of peaches, apricots, and pears in jars and processed them. Over the next few months, we picked 12 huge boxes of tomatoes from a neighbor's field and turned them into sauce, juice, and salsa. We picked 10 5-gallon buckets of Concord grapes from Swede's vines and processed them into grape juice and jelly. On another of those inhumane, tiring days, Diane came home from work, gathering her kids and disappearing into the basement as she had done every day since canning season began. I sent Jake downstairs to tell her I needed to talk to her, and would she please come upstairs. Diane came up and leaned over the black wrought iron stair railing. Jake said you wanted to talk to me. I continued to slip the skins off the boiled tomatoes before I cut and dropped them into jars. I was hoping you would help me get the rest of this canning done so I can get some rest too. Well, maybe I can, Diane said, but I'm pretty tired from working all day. My stomach started to ache. Even the slightest confrontation scared me. I'm too tired too, Diane. My days never end. When you get home from work, you gather your kids and disappear into your house. Sit in front of your television and enjoy your kids. But you're home all day with your kids, she replied, and you can take a break whenever you want to. And there are no breaks, Diane, I snapped back. When can I take a break while taking care of 8 kids all day and trying to keep up with the house, laundry, diapers, meals, dishes, and all the past months of canning and yard work that still needs to be done? Diane back. But I give you half of the money I earn, and that's not fair. I have to leave my kids and work all day, and you reap the benefits. I do more work in a day than you ever thought of doing, Diane. You wouldn't have a job or any money at all if I weren't caring for your kids. Who would watch, feed, bathe, and love them like I do for anything less? While you're at work in your quiet office all day long, my hectic, noisy days never end. When you're watching TV, I'm still working, doing everything I didn't get done while I tended to your kids. If you can find someone else, maybe you should, and then I won't feel like a crazy maniac all day long, every day. I don't see why I should have to help you with canning that you choose to do. I didn't buy all this fruit. I don't want to have to work all day and come home to work, she explained. I calmed down a little. Well, Diane, you and your children eat just as much or more of the fruit than we do. So if you want to relinquish that privilege, I won't expect you to help me get it canned. Diane knew she and her children had been eating gobs of peaches as well as the other fruits and vegetables my kids and I have canned. We sat on Jake and Alan's twin beds where we finally retreated away from lots of little ears to finish our first and last real argument that finally wound down into a sane conversation. Diane agreed to help me wrap up our workday together. She said she'd start making dinner for her own kids, or she would help out with the dishes whenever I made dinner for all of us. And I promised her I tried to have more patience with her when she was having a tough day. We gave each other a big hug. With those promises, we renewed our love for each other and our desire to live the principle of plural marriage as sweet, loving sister wives should. She said that was the first of the last of their arguments. So I guess that did work for her. And that is the end of chapter 28, you guys. Let me know what you think. I got to get going. For those of you who do not know, by the time you see this video, I'm at my niece's graduation. She's graduating from college with her master's, and I am so very proud of her. So you probably won't see me again until Monday, and hopefully I have time to get a little bit of content done. I don't know how this is going to work, but we'll see. Anyways, until next time, let's see if the clicker works.